All right, everybody. It's Denise Siegel, and hi, everybody. Hey, KK, bad girl. Hi there, everyone's joining me. All right, so it's a pretty crazy day today. The Northeast is covered in snow. It's snowing like crazy here, but we might lose power eventually. And another person has been shot by ice. Um, so, um, when I said I felt a wall of rage coming, I guess this is part of it. So I just wanted to be there with you guys because it's a very anxiety provoking period of time. Um, and I'm willing, if anybody wants to talk about anything, just post it in the messages and we'll get started talking about whatever is on your minds to go over here. I'm thinking that this massive stellium in Aries coming up in March is sort of, it seems like we're headed towards this. Hey, Tracy. Um, uh, Towards this revolutionary kind of pushback and um, war on multiple fronts, I think, is what's happening here. War against the people of the United States, declaring war on random countries. This is a really insane period of time. So, anybody, yeah, I know. This is really upsetting. I totally agree with you, Jen. Our taxpayer dollars are paying for this. This is um, this is something I've been thinking about for a while, and I talked about at a certain point. You know, uh, maybe people just go on a tax strike. Maybe all of Americans just stop paying their taxes, and we don't fund this. They are killing us, and why are we paying for this? That is a really good question. So that Trump can just go grift and, I mean, he keeps saying that the economy is great, but the economy is only great for him. That's who it's great for. He's stealing money here, right and left, and we're paying to murder people on the streets and declare war on other countries. Nobody wants this. Um, yeah, we have no say in this matter, and it is horrific. It is truly, truly upsetting. Um, and I feel like at some point the state governments are going to have to do something about this. You're going to allow people to be murdered on your streets. It's just unbelievable. So, I mean, let me just say that I didn't talk about this openly, but I talked about this privately. But back in probably 2017, 2018, in the summer, I started having visions of this exact thing where people were being shot and beaten on the streets. Any trouble for Chicago? I think this is coming to all the cities. I think this is just the ramp up of what's coming. And, that's what all those billions of dollars are going to be paying for is more ICE agents killing people on the streets of many, many cities. So I think this is perhaps that flood of this is coming in the spring. And the amount of anger you feel now is only going to be escalated by tenfold. I agree. They do need to activate the National Guard in Minnesota and just, I mean, but if they do that, if Governor Walz does that, then this is really the start of civil war, right? Because that would be the state government fighting the federal government. And somebody's going to have to do it at some point because I think the people are going to demand that. And you can't just have people randomly, thugs, going around murdering people who are peacefully protesting. Yeah, it's really, really upsetting. uh, hey, Jeff. Hey, KK. People do need to be protected. And, um, you know, I mean, certainly this is totally by design. This is by design by the Trump administration. They are purposefully doing this. This is not an accident. Uh, and this is going to continue until resistance comes for real. And the Democrats can't just talk or hem or haw. There has to be an actual concerted effort to be a real resistance party. And I'm kind of wondering if the Democrats are going to be up to it or if there's going to have to be some other third party that rises up, that, resists this and fights against this. I'm sure most of you probably have saw the Black Panthers, I think it was, like, a while ago now, maybe a week ago, saying that, after the Renee Good shooting, they felt like, the only way to resist ICE was with force, and they were gonna load themselves up with weapons and protect the people who were vulnerable in their city. Um, that is, and I know people are getting really angry. If you saw the video, that guy was beaten. He was on the ground. There's blood all over the place, and then he was shot. So this is not. Uh, they just murdered him. I mean, just like they did with Renee Good. Yeah, I heard 7 Democrats voted to fund ICE. Uh, this is really upsetting, and as I've been saying now for a while, the Democrats are complicit in this, and I think we're gonna have to think about how we go forward, maybe if we wanna try to resolve this politically, which I hope we can, which I'm not sure we can, but if we can, we're gonna have to, have a third party, maybe a Democratic Socialist Party that um, is a real resistance force and put people like that in droves into positions of power and just go full on far left, have socialist democracy like they have in Europe and just clear out all of the idiots in Congress and the House and Senate and replace the presidency and really rethink the Constitution. Um, I don't have any faith in the majority of Dems either. And, yeah, there are some good ones, like you said, Jasmine Crockett, AOC, Bernie Sanders, who's an independent, but, um, there's not enough of them. They need to all be on that side of history. We need full-blown real resistance, and, um, I am pretty certain that until people we're really at a tipping point here, not just with this, but I'm sure you guys have heard that Trump's, talking about invading Greenland. The European Union is talking about doing a trade bazooka. We had a bunch of different uh, foreign countries divesting from our basically selling off all their bonds. There's talk of getting rid of and dumping the dollar. And if that happens, we're going to spiral into what happened in Germany back in I guess, in the 1920s, late 20s into the 30s. And we're going to be in serious financial trouble. Basically, our economic system would pretty much collapse. So at that point, I think there will be that there be no reason for people to not fight. And I think this is pushing people more and more and more towards, um, like I've been saying too, and this I want to state this too is, and I can't state this enough that peaceful protests and protesting in general really only works in a civil disobedience only works in a civil society. When you have a fascist regime, unless you have every single man, woman, and child on the streets and they just can't kill everybody, um, even then, though, it's a very touchy whether that even works because um, fascism, there's no respect for life, and they have real hatred towards the people, and we're seeing it now. It's like people are peacefully protesting and they're murdering peaceful protesters. So, what do you do with that? What do you do with that? I mean, this is a conundrum. I'm not pro violence. I'm just saying that I think at a certain point, people are going to lose their shit and this is going to get very bad. Um, what about Crockett? I didn't hear what somebody wrote something about her. Yeah. Well, hey, incognito. Okay. So Uranus is about to go over the fourth house cusp again. So it was there last summer when all the protests, the marches started and the protests against Trump. it's retrograded back into the 3rd house, and it's inching towards, um it's actually, I think, gonna be at 28 degrees by March, which is on, it's on the, fixed star that, represents losing your head, and once it hits that point, it'll be right conjunct the 4th house, and it's gonna pop into the 4th house by April, and that's when the stellium of planets in Aries are happening. I think that's the start of people's rage. Now, I've been talking about this period of time for a long time coming up in the summer when Uranus and Mars are conjunct, and that's starting in June into July, and that is a time where I think what we're seeing now is going to be gonna see this escalate and escalate and escalate, and I think this is when, things really break out into, um, I guess you could call civil war, revolution, whatever you wanna call it, um, and, how that looks, I think, is, uh, more of this, and probably, I think, masses of protesters and potentially, like I said, I had visions of multiple protesters in DC and being shot at. I've also seen drones being used to kill people here in the States. So this is something you have to think about is that I think the federal government has no respect for the people at this point and, in fact, is at war with us. They've taken away healthcare. They took away NOAA, so we can't even predict weather forecasting very well. They've put it in place to like dissuade people from getting immunized, and we're seeing all kinds of deaths over that. They seem to be have no compunction about killing us, right? And this move towards trying to get into general intelligence with AI to replace everyone's jobs is what we're in is a cabal by the billionaire class and a kleptocracy. All those people are supporting Trump with this Christian nationalist side, which are really those are just pawns of the billionaire class. Um, and of course, the people who are high up in that Christian nationalist movement who basically suck the bone marrow off of the poor people to elevate themselves into positions of power. All of those people are in a cabal to basically displace us and take whatever they want. I mean, I know this seems insane that we've had this long history of peace and prosperity, and it is a real failure of imagination for a lot of people that many people could not see the line that led to this. We've slowly been inching towards this for decades, and now we're finally here. We have the most corrupt, insane, dictatorial madman who is in control of our system, and he has supported himself with insane people around him who, are basically Nazis, or whatever, fascists, whatever you wanna call them, authoritarians, um, and they have no moral compass, and they have no logic, and so this is why I've been saying for a long time, like, you can't really there's no rationality here. You could say, "Oh, they went into Venezuela for the oil." Well, Trump did take $500,000 and put it in his own personal bank account, but really, it's whoever's talking to Trump and whatever crazy ideas he has, that he's gonna be the king of the world. He's putting together this peace, um project, which is really a sort of fake UN kind of thing, where every country has to pay him personally $1 billion to join it, and he's the head of it, and for life. So he's trying to install himself into a position of power forever, and this is what dictators do. This is what Putin did in Russia. This is what happened in so many democracies that fell. It's you know, this is why I've been reluctant to say that the 2026 elections were going to change anything. Um, I I think we're in it, and there's only one way out, and that is for people to really respond in as a group. We all have to kind of unite against this fascist state. There's no other way to do it. And what that means for each of us is going to be different. But some people are probably going to feel like their back is up against a wall to such a degree where they resort to violence, like what the Black Panthers were talking about. Other people will peacefully protest. Others will call this out or be observers. Other people will do spiritual work to try to calm people down. But we all have a role to play in trying to resist this in whatever way we can. I recently heard that in polling, basically Trump was at like between like 6% and 25% support among young people. And the other thing that's you got to think about is all of these wars. There's wars against the people, the war he's going to do in Greenland, the war he wants to go and supposedly take over Cuba and Mexico and God fuck all, whatever crazy shit he's planning to do. Um, who's going to fight all those wars? Who's going to fight all those wars? I mean, there's only so many people in the military that we have a military that is not conscripted. They volunteer to be part of it. And we have a powerful military, but we don't have a giant military. We don't have millions and millions of people in our military. So how are you going to invade all these countries? This is something I talked about on Substack when I first started Substack back in 2022. I think it was, or it might have been 20. Yeah, I think it was 2022. Or, yeah, maybe 2023. Where I was looking at the charts of people who have Neptune in Aquarius, and I alluded to this back then. I've been trying to kind of parse out information when people can hear it instead of giving people stuff so far in advance that they can't even imagine it. And what I was saying is these kids that are young people now, teenagers going into young adulthood, Neptune in Aquarius is what the people who fought in the Revolutionary, I believe, yeah, it was the Revolutionary War. I don't remember the astrology right now. Might have been the Civil War too, but I can't remember if it couldn't have been both. So it was one of the big wars that we had on our soil. But basically, Neptune in Aquarius is lost through revolution, right? And I was talking about how um, in every generation, when a Pluto transit hits the Neptune, that generation has to deal with a big, giant, very, uh, usually a very difficult period. And in my generation, with Neptune and Scorpio, we had the AIDS crisis, we had the AIDS epidemic, and I lost countless friends during that period of time. Many of us, sex was basically death, and that's the Neptune Pluto conjunction. Well, these kids have Neptune in Aquarius, and Neptune Aquarius is revolution. Now, yes, it's also the internet and technology, which they're really good with. But when that Pluto transit starts to hit their Neptune, I've always been worried that this was indicative of these kids being in the front line of fire, their bodies being the ones who are going to have to resist this and potentially um, Neptune is loss and transition, and so is Pluto is death. So it's very worrisome to me that this thing is escalating, and eventually, as I think our military will split. I think the states are going to fight the federal government, and I've been thinking that for a long time, but it seems insane, so I didn't talk about it much, but, there's nothing that's gonna stop Trump. He himself said the only thing that would stop him was his own morality, which he has none. So, I hate to say this, but I think this is the beginning. We're seeing this escalate, and it's gonna get very hot starting into the spring and into the summer, and I'm worried about where this is going, and maybe if we could get Democrats to actually do their job and put up a wall and try to control and contain the situation, there would be some hope that we could have a political solution. But unfortunately, as I've said, they've been complicit in this really for a long time. I think it started, and people don't like me saying this, but you know, George Bush and his administration, they should have been tried for war crimes for opening up Guantanamo Bay and torturing people. Nancy Pelosi chose not to do that. She said she wasn't going to do that. And you have to ask yourself um, why that keeps happening, why Trump was impeached twice, but nobody would convict him. Um, this is a failure of our political system that the people in power want to stay in power. They have great privilege. They have great benefits. We pay their salaries. They have healthcare for life. They have a pension. They make a lot of money. They get insider information. They trade that information. They become wealthy. And, they don't want to rock the boat. And that's where we're at. Okay. Jasmine Crockett voted last week to give Israel $3.3 billion. Israel per capita income is 15,000 higher than Crockett. Wow. So that's the best uniparty. It is a uniparty, and we have only, you know, it's in really it's a very subtle difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. I feel the Democrats will throw crumbs to the people to keep them feeling like there's somebody kind of fighting for them, and that's been going on for, in my opinion, for at least 20 years, maybe longer, maybe 30. Um, the Republican Party is, co-opted by fascism, and now the Democrats really don't have any tools in their disposal to fight this because they've been allowing this to kind of continue to push. Like people used to say, they brought a knife to a gunfight, and it's like, did they though? Really, were they even fighting? I don't really feel like they were, and here we are. So what are the solutions? This is one of the things I've been talking about for a long time is people have to think about what kind of government they want to replace this with. I think it's going to come down to us rethinking what doesn't work in our system. How do we fight for the things we want? We should have universal health care. If we're paying all this money, like you said, we're paying money to fund ICE. You know, we're spending money on things that none of us want, but everybody wants healthcare. Everybody wants a fair system. Billionaires should not be allowed to exist, in my opinion. This is just a consolidation of power, and they're able to control the political and specter. You see that once Citizens United came into place, that was really the death knell to our democracy. So this is not a new thing, but it is a thing that has gotten so rotten and so entrenched in our system, in our politics, in our culture that we've allowed a very few people to consolidate so much wealth that they have more wealth than some nation states do, and they can buy power. And that's what's happening now. And look at Trump. He's just using the presidency as his own personal piracy campaign where he just goes and steals whatever he wants and continues to and no one even bothers to bring it up. No one no Democrat is even trying to talk about the emoluments clause at this point or calling him out on his graft and greed and just these insane things. We're really, the Epstein files that were supposed to be released, he's fighting against that. At this point, I don't even see what it matters. If they were released, he's afraid maybe the few people that still support him would finally turn against him, I guess. And maybe he'd lose his 20 or 30% of the population that are full-blown Trumpers. Maybe that's it. And he would have no support. But this is very bad. And even if Trump were to go away tomorrow, this is another thing I want you guys to realize. The people that surround Trump, like J.D. Vance, He is a puppet of the technocracy. So you've got him, you've got Stephen Miller, and what Republican would replace Trump if Trump wasn't around? Now, maybe JD Vance would be more, you could basically see what his moves would be more clearly, but Trump is so erratic and impossible to kind of, he has no logic. So maybe that would be a little bit easier to deal with. But um, I think you just see that the technocracy would get more aggressive. And that's why they want Greenland. They want Greenland to build their fantasy computer simulated universe where they basically have AI in control. They want to put all their data centers there and start their technocracy there. So and mine the minerals that they need and have a coolant, like a built-in coolant system there and water. And that's another thing that's happening is we are in the middle of climate change and we have uh, water bankruptcy happening around the world. We have mass migration that's coming and now we have this. So this is the thing I've been saying for God, for fucking 10 years now. It's like we're on the Titanic and we've got this idiot starting fights at the bathroom and everyone is focused on that. And there's so many problems in the world. Yet we have a population who has been completely and utterly uh, brainwashed into believing things that go against their interests and the interest of humanity, the interest of their own pocketbooks, the interest of their own life, and shaking them out of this cult. Perhaps that's what the Epstein files are really about: is the fear that if those people see the Epstein files and realize that the very things that they were terrified of are who they voted for, would finally shake them out of that tree. But we are not probably going to see the full release of the Epstein files. I mean, Trump is going to, do everything he can to stop that from happening, including starting wars, which I figured he would invade Venezuela as a distraction. And now he's using ICE to wage war on our cities. All of this is, the more he is aggressive, the easier this thing is gonna be buried, and we just have multiple problems here, um, all piling on top of each other, and I think rage is the word that this 2026, it is going to be rage. Last year it was depression, this year it's rage, and I feel that so intensely. I think the whole world is so angry and upset about, not just what he's doing here, but what he's doing to all these other countries as well. Um Yeah, so let's see. No, he's not even all there. No, and in fact, I heard, on I think it was, the Kyle McCluskey, show, Secular Talk, that he was saying that the nephew of Trump, who they're his grandfather, so Trump's dad died of Alzheimer's, and Alzheimer's is actually, genetic, and that everybody in the family believes that actually he's in, the first stages of it. Now, the other thing I heard from somewhere else was that there is a drug that's new to treat Alzheimer's patients, and they inject it in your hands. And a lot of people believe that's why he has those bruises on his hands. So he definitely is in the throes of some kind of neurological decline as well. And I listened to an interview with Ruth Ben Guyot, who said that when she studied all kinds of dictators and authoritarians, and she was saying that when a dictator or an authoritarian becomes older, weaker, they're not strong physically anymore, they become much more dangerous. And I think we're seeing that with Trump. I mean, the other thing is he's the type of guy, to me, that thinks, well, I'm going to die. I might as well take the rest of the world with me. I I don't think this is going to get more rational or uh, he's going to stop. And I don't see anybody around him stopping him. So the only thing that's gonna stop him is us. I mean, that's really what it amounts to. Maybe the rest of the world, but if that happens, we're all cooked too. So this is a a very precarious situation. How to how to handle it, how to deal with it, I think, is to personally just do your own work, try to stay stable, try to connect with source, try to use your intuition, um, take it one step at a time. And everyone's going to have to make their decision about how they want to handle this in terms of the bigger picture. But you know, I really think that people are going to eventually they're going to take up arms. I think I really do, and I've seen that for a long time, and I believe that's what's coming. Okay. Recently, I went to a Democratic Club's Christmas party meeting, and one lady approached me and said something along the line of, we could really use a lot of young people now for the midterms because the big, beautiful bill, as if that shot hasn't already passed both the House and the Senate. Interesting. Um, Also, temporal dementia. I've heard that too, as well. Okay, but he's got tons of minions that are running Gestapo. Exactly. So this is we're paying taxes for things we don't want or need. Exactly. And um so do I have answers about I think this is a personal decision everyone has to make. Um, you know, I personally think, you know, um, like I told you guys about that dream I had in 2021 when Biden first came into office about being in this industrial space, basically, with many tiers. Um, and it was dark in there, and people were getting shot all around me. And there were people like who were lefties, or people who were Democrats, or people who were not Trumper types. And it was so distressing. And I mean, maybe it's a metaphor for what's happening, but I do feel like it's also a metaphor for this is not going to stop with immigrants, as we're seeing with them shooting Americans who are protesters, peaceful protesters. Um, this is, I mean, I think once he finishes trying to, round up and go for the people that who directly disobeyed him or made him feel small, um, this is he's going to go after protesters, people that don't agree with him. They've already made some kind of I don't remember. I think ICE put up something on their website. Somebody told me about this is a Christian nation or some crazy thing like that. And if you don't, basically, you're not a bootlicking Trumper, then you're anti-American and you're an enemy of the state. So that tells you what the next level of this is going to go, where it's going to go. ICE is not just ICE is just think about them as the brown shirts. That's what they are. They're Trump's personal militia. They're full of Proud Boys and people who are violent, J6ers who he and now they're just trying to get as many bodies into that organization or whatever Gestapo as they possibly can. So there's also talk about ICE being methed out. Huh, that makes sense. Well, the Nazis did that too. Interestingly enough, Trump, according to people who worked on The Apprentice, Trump was a big cokehead. I mean, he claims he's not a drug addict, but he lies about everything. So that is why he has been incontinent for the last 30 something years. I had a friend who was a musician. I'm not going to name names, but he told me that he became a cokehead in the like 80s, and he started to lose control of um, his bowels. But first, it started with peeing himself, and then he started losing control of his bowels. And once that happened, he stopped, completely doing cocaine. Cocaine it destroys your brain. It basically creates holes in it, especially crack, but cocaine too. If you've ever looked at a MRI of someone with coke brain, it's like they have little holes all over their brain, dead spots in their brain, and eventually you become incontinent. So, from what I've heard, Trump was a cokehead in the 80s into the 90s, lost control of his bowels, started wearing diapers. He was in diapers actually on The Apprentice. That's what people on the show said, and I believe them. Um, that came out recently, and accordingly, the other story is that when he couldn't do coke, he would use Adderall. So, whether he's on Adderall or coke, whatever, again, Hitler was a speed freak, and so were all of the people in his, SS. They were all a bunch of speed freaks. Okay, been here for a while, but hello. Hey, Ingrid. Yes, ICE is taking pics. Took a pic of her license plate and told her she is in their database now. That's right. So, this is important. If you do decide at some point to go to any kind of protest, I have a pair of glasses. These glasses I got on Zini, which is super cheap place. I think they were like $60 or something. And I have prescription lenses, like I have progressives, so they're normally very expensive. Um, and they also turn into sunglasses in ultraviolet light. So if you go outside, they turn into sunglasses. But they have this special coating that you can't, that nothing, that a computer can't read your iris or it can't scan your face. It kind of just makes it so that you can't be identified. I would say something like that. There's another trick I've heard that if you wear shirts or clothing with lots of different patterns on it, specifically like looking like faces, so that there's multiple faces all over you, that also confuses ID kind of technology. Um, Wearing a hat, wearing a mask, um, not taking a phone, not having your car nearby, but if you do take a phone, take a burner phone or take a phone that's, just one of those flip phones that doesn't have any kind of real, uh, that's old school kind of one, or like I said, a burner phone. Um, Maybe just take your camera with you and a burner phone. Those kinds of things you really should think about if you're gonna get involved in any of this stuff at any level. And I mean, just showing up to sort of support people, even being on the street saying "ICE out of our city," whatever. I feel like people are not doing that enough, and that's something I've been talking about for a long time because you have to make it hard for them. Don't make it easy for them. We should be one faceless m- bunch of people that they can't find. That if you're going to go to these protests, that there were just a wash of humanity where they don't know how to identify anybody to punish anybody. That's what people need to think about. If you're going to do peaceful protests, you also need to really mask and be really careful about your identity. I know that obviously, if you're stopped by an ICE agent, they're going to try to get your paperwork. I don't know what that even means. If you have a driver's license, I don't know if that counts. You have to carry your passport around now. I don't know. But I think if you're in a big crowd, you also have to be very careful, pay attention to your surroundings, use your intuition. If it feels weird and get out of there or step back and get into a safe place. Um, Again, don't bring digital stuff, like, if you have an old camera, if you have an old digital camera that's not online, stuff like this are things to think about if you do wanna be involved in trying to support this. You have to protect your identity. I believe that's hugely important, not for you personally just, but also for the movement of people. Everybody should be doing this so that it makes their fucking jobs harder. Okay. Also, about the dream you had about the person dressed in white. Oh, I recently discovered the most of my religious beliefs revolve around deism, and I never knew how much I resonate with the basis of freedom within the religion. Okay. So, yeah. So, I did have this dream about this religious. So, I'll explain the dream. And I do feel like it is hopeful, and that on the other side of all this chaos, there is something coming. Okay. I dreamt about this man, and he had a name that clearly was not a Christian name. That's all I can tell you. It was like something Baba or something like that. It was either he was Hindu or he might have been Muslim. He might have been Buddhist. He might have been, uh, I don't know what religion he was, you know, caramel-colored person, with dark hair, and he was dressed in white. I think he had a little white cap on his head too, and behind him were just masses of people, and they were all standing in front of what looked like probably like the detention sort of center that was in the dream where I was in this sort of warehoused place. It was sort of like outside of one of these buildings, and he was standing in front of people, and he had this really positive, benefic kind of vibe, and he had organized all of these people. Now, I don't know if this is a metaphor for, you know, people who are on the spiritual path resonating and kind of finding someone to sort of coalesce around. Um, but remember, I have dreams that happen years before they, I just want to put that out there because I've had, you know, dreams about and visions about this period of time when I was 12 years old. So I don't know how far in the future that is. All I know is that there is a hope at the end of this, and there is someone coming that is going to be a positive, powerful uh, leader that has a strong spiritual, and I don't mean religious, but I mean a strong spiritual compass and somebody who is compassionate and really wants to help people. Kind of like a Gandhi, but not Gandhi-ish, but different, but a similar kind of vibe, like somebody who's really rooted in compassion and um, helping others and being on the right path. So I do know there's someone coming in. He's not someone who that I've seen at all on the scene right now. So um, hopefully he'll emerge over the next couple years, and that's been my feeling about the protests. The protests might be better in terms of organizing people and building community more so than even being effective as protests. So, people going to protests and meeting other people who have similar values and people emerging from that whole um, those groups of people that have leadership ability and who take roles and maybe eventually become more politically involved and a political party or a political resistance arising from that, that eventually could rise to power and help remake this country. So that's been my feeling about why the protests are important more than, you know, stopping this, which, like I've been saying, I don't think they're gonna stop anything. They're certainly showing people what's really going on, but in terms of stopping the behavior, I don't think they're gonna stop the Trump administration from the cruelty that it plans to continue doing, and in fact, I think that's the whole point of this is to scare people, frighten them into not into compliance and into whatever they feel they wanna make this country in their, image of this grafty, greedy, "You guys, go fuck yourselves, I'll die off, and we're gonna take everything. We're gonna loot the treasury, we're gonna take everything for ourselves," that sort of mentality, "We're pirates," kind of vibe. So, I don't really see that stopping that. I mean, imagine if you were, with, like, s you're hanging out with Jeffrey Dahmer you know, uh, or any Richard Ramirez, your protests aren't gonna do any good. I mean, you're gonna have to fight to get your way out of that situation, and that's the situation we're in. I think that's a microcosmic version of what we're involved in right now, and he is not a normal politician. This is not a normal situation. We can't look to our history, in the United States to really understand what's happening. We have to look at other countries that had failed states that ended up in fascistic or authoritarian situations. Many of them were democracies. I mean, Russia started out as a democracy after the Soviet Union fell, and look at where it is now. Hungary. I mean, even Ukraine fell into fascism for a moment. Then the Velvet Revolution happened, and they the people organized very quickly to stop it, but they had a history of knowing what fascism looked like. They understood exactly what was going on immediately, and they responded, and they were able to push it out, root it out from its like, think about it as a plant, right? The longer the plant is in the ground, the deeper the roots. So, what they did is they saw the plant planted and they go, "Nope." They pulled it right out like a weed. We've let this fester now for a long, long time. And we think of Trump as being, I mean, look, even the first administration was the putting down of the roots. This is um this is the flowering of the plant. And all of that Project 2025 stuff and Stephen Miller and all these people, they've been planning this for God knows how long, at least a couple decades. So this is not this is now more like a tree that we have to cut down. It's not something we can pluck out. And I think that's the reality we're in. Okay, let's see. Alex Preddy, the man killed by federal agents today in Minneapolis, appears to have been a registered nurse. Oh, an athlete, a son, and a brother. O'Hara said the man was a lawful gun owner with a permit. Records show the Preddy attended the University of Minnesota. State records show Preddy was issued a nursing license in 2021, and it remains active through March 2026. Yes, it did start with Reagan. In terms of this iteration, yes, I totally agree. Minneapolis is an open carry state, and so is Tennessee, and so are a lot in Arizona, and the governor of Arizona was just talking about that recently, that if ICE came to Arizona and they're masked and they don't show badges, that in their state, you have the right to kill people like that. And she's worried that if they come to Arizona, Phoenix or whatever, people are going to start shooting them. And so this guy, he had the right to carry the gun, and they murdered him for that. If I were Governor Walz, I would have already called out the National Guard. I would have already done it. I would have been like, "Get the fuck out of my state. You're not welcome here." Because one of the things that people don't seem to understand about bullies is they only understand force. They don't understand, well, we're going to try to work with them. That doesn't work. This is my history. My brother was on the spectrum and was bullied a lot. And he was little. And um I used to see, he'd be outside playing and like he was 3 or 4 years old and some 10-year-old kid would start picking on him. I would run across the street, even though I'd be 6 or 7, and I'd leave my brother alone. And the only thing that stopped him from being beaten up was me saying embarrassing, humiliating, and telling the kid to leave my brother alone, otherwise I was gonna go crazy. Um, Confrontation is the only way to stop bullies, and I never luckily had to fight anyone, but I wasn't afraid to fight if I had to, and that in itself was scary enough for people to back off. None of the Democrats are doing that. None of them seem like they have any fire in them at all, and, you can't stop bullies. This is why the rest of the world has come to this conclusion, like, they're ready to fight us because there's not gonna be any way to stop Trump until there is pushback, and I don't mean just, passive, like, "Well, we'll give you this, but you take" no, that's not how bullies work. You have to just put up a wall of intense resistance, shame them into their corner, and contain them. There's no other way. Um, is to get rid of them. That's right. There is no other way. Uh, Denise with an Aries res I've got Mars in the first house in Libra. So, I'm a justice fighter. Yeah. What is the viability of the Steve Bannon or Gavin Newsom gaining the seat of the presidency? Oh, I don't think Steve Bannon. I don't see Steve Bannon, being able to gain the presidency, but who knows? I guess if we don't have actual elections, that is possible. Gavin Newsom, I have real trepidation about Gavin Newsom. He's, uh he's kinda smarmy, and, I heard recently that there was a bill that was passed in California to put a tax, like a 5% tax on billionaires. He vetoed it. He also oh, no, he vetoed a universal healthcare coverage bill that went through the House and the Senate there, vetoed it, and, people are wanting to, pass this legislation to put a 5% tax wealth tax on wealthy people, and he is opposing that. So he is, he talks big and he knows how to get attention. But let's not forget that birds of a feather flock together. And he was married to that crazy woman who was dating Trump's son. And if you listen to his podcast, he's all chummy with Steve Bannon and all those guys. And I don't think that's a great thing. I'm all for people talking to each other, but I listened to it and that's not what was happening there. It was like they were old friends. It was a little creepy. Someone was talking about guerrilla warfare brewing. Yes, totally. Also attacking winter people in winter is not smart. That's very true. Newsom is neo-lib. No, thank you. I agree. Diane is someone from Alaska. I agree. Newsom is a slick politician. Totally. Guilfoyle, thank you, Incognito. Yes. Denise, will people start fighting back now that ICE is killing people? Let's start us. Yes, totally, Elena. Absolutely. That's what I think is going to happen starting. So here's what I think. When all those planets go into Aries, I think that wall of rage I felt is going to break. And I also feel like what we're seeing here now is probably going to be happening in multiple places at the same time. Um, and I feel like this is going to get people to organize. And I do think that this summer is when the start of civil war really breaks out. That's my feeling. Um, and what does that mean? Probably, like you're saying, guerrilla warfare. Um, probably things being I think probably people, ex-military people, probably some people in the military defecting, people who are regular people, joining up, you know, kind of think about the 60s, what happened, but on steroids, right? Imagine it's much more well organized and more like militias rather than a few hippies, who had little movements or just like the Black Panthers or something. Um, we were still in a civil society back then. So, uh, imagine people with nothing left to lose. That's a dangerous thing, very dangerous thing. I don't think MAGA expects that, or do they? Well, they've been talking about it for like since the 90s. Since really since the Clinton administration. That's what all that crazy right wing militia stuff is about because of Ruby Ridge and Waco, where they believed the federal government was going to take all their guns away. Ironically, Trump, I heard this a few months ago that Trump was looking into and kind of monitoring gun clubs. So I think at some point he's probably going to try to take people's guns away too, which that might actually get some of his own people to fight against him and some of those militias to join the other team. So, uh, does MAGA expect this? MAGA expected it in reverse. Let's put it that way. MAGA thought that the Democrats were going to be the ones who did this, which I never understood and makes no sense. But I believe that that's what they've been fed in their diet of right wing media, that the crazy leftists were going to go and take their guns away and start a civil war and all this crazy. Because think about it, like a lot of those people in MAGA are people that were conservatives during the 60s and saw that the left was, really pushing the country forward. And some groups were kind of violent and there was a lot of chaos. And they became afraid and became more religious and more extreme. And those people got into powerful positions in media and talk radio and things like that. And they fed this diet of bullshit to people who were older. And those people had kids, and their kids listened to that bullshit. And so there was an indoctrination process. But I think it really is sort of a callback to the 60s, where that's, and then when Ruby Ridge happened and Waco happened, I think that was confirmation bias for them. Like, oh, you know, they didn't let these people do what they wanted on their own property. And that worked them up into a whole other level, and they started forming militias. But I think they've been thinking this is gonna happen, but they thought it was gonna come from the other side. And now they believe, I think at this point, many of those, people who are really far into the cult, that the Trump administration is, you know, clamping down on the things that they've been afraid of. The thing that's interesting to me about the psychology of all this is there was a study a long time ago, that I read, where people on the right, their main kind of they really operate out of fear, and people on the left really operate out of, like, compassion. And so, if you're fear-based, it's very that's a powerful emotion. Um, and the interesting thing about Ruth Bangaya, the interview I heard with her, psychologically, her studying of all the different dictators, she was saying that they actually are very fear based. That's why Trump is building that ballroom. It's a giant bunker, basically. It's got bulletproof glass, and it's a bunker. It's a giant mansion bunker. And he is paranoid, and they are very paranoid people like fascists. So, what you really have is a breakdown of good and evil, because fear is really the root of evil, in my opinion. Fear you other people, you hate other people, you become greedy because you think, everyone's going to steal your resources because you're afraid. If you're somebody who basically has empathy and compassion and believes most people are good, you can't even fathom this kind of mentality. So, when those people at MAGA become afraid themselves that they're going to be targeted and that their rights are being taken away, that is probably what will break some of them truly away from this. Now, you're going to get a certain percentage of people that are never going to break away because, they're just, think about the Nazis. I mean, those people who are in ICE, who are getting money and power from this, they'll never break away because it's satisfying their anger and their fear and their greed. But people who are on the outside, who are sort of in the bubble of, like, if you were to go all the way deep, okay, so ICE people and those Christian right and whatever, going further out, sort of at the edges of MAGA, those people will fall away at some point. So, the reason why I asked about C-Banner was because I suspect somebody worse than Trump will begin to emerge. I 100% agree. I do not suspect that right-wingers like the MAGA shaman will ever horseshoe. Right. Deanna, we are with you. Stay strong and hold. Oh, and the ICE watch to protect children going to and from school. Trump is mad because he cannot control the narrative because of Neptune, especially when there are videos and photos of children being kidnapped by ICE. Look at the 5-year-old. I heard about that. It's fucking hideous. Yes, I agree with you on that front. And also, I agree with you, Jeff, that I have been saying that for a long time. I wasn't sure in 2020. I knew we were going to have a 4-year break, and then this was going to come roaring back. I wasn't sure if it would be Trump. But no one else emerged. No one else emerged in his stead, so it was Trump. But I agree. This isn't going to end with Trump. I mean, once somebody opens the path to this, you have to be careful. Also, when you get into a situation like this kind of situation we're in, we're headed into a civil war, a hot one. There will be people that emerge as leaders. Like I said, I saw the good leader, but there will be bad ones too. There will be people who come deep out of this ideology who will rise up to sort of replace Trump. Now, interestingly, Ruth Ben-Ghiat was saying, and this is kind of hopeful, is that people like Trump surround themselves with people who have no charisma and who are kind of idiots or just cronies, right? Because they don't want anybody to replace them. They want power for all time. They don't want anybody to upstage them. So, um, certainly Vance isn't going to upstage him. None of the people around him are going to do that. But I'm more worried about as things start to really break down, and I have had other things I'm not gonna tell you about now because uh, I don't think it's appropriate time to tell people some of the other things I've seen. But, I do believe that as this government breaks down and people resist it, the one thing we always have to think about is in a state where there's chaos, people can emerge that seem good that are not, that, seem to be leaders, charismatic leaders who say the right things. Like, for example, I mean, you could say that about Newsom, right? He's saying all the right things, but what he does doesn't match what he says. I'm not saying he's a fascist. I'm just saying that he's really all about him. So you have to be careful. Discernment's going to be hugely important because whoever emerges out of this soup of chaos, there will be those that are bad and that have bad intentions who are just like Trump, and who see the brokenness and who know how to clean this up and put themselves in power. And then you get like what happened in the French Revolution, where you get a Napoleon character and you have years of like these chaos of different turnovers and this feels more to me, frankly, and it always has. What's coming is more like the French Revolution than anything else. That's what it feels like. The French Revolution is the closest parallel in history that I feel like this is. Um, so anyway, okay, the former friend. Okay, so let's see what we've got here going on. Oh, go back here for a while. Okay, so Elena, I just ended a 14-year friendship the last April with someone who went full MAGA, who is a spiritualist and has become so delusional in her thinking that she thinks the universe is going to save her without doing the personal work. Her personal life is a mess and she lives in poverty. Wow. That is not uncommon, Elena. Um, and I have theories about why that is. I talked about them a lot. So, I mean, I think uh, I think that in order to be really actually grounded in yourself and have the gift, you have to do the work on your shadow stuff. You also have to stay humble. You also have to know at the same time. You have a lot of balancing acts to do. You have to stay grounded and you also have to be open. This is not an easy feat. And many people who walk down this path, many people get the gift through a lot of trauma, actually, in childhood, because your gift is honed by having to sort of avert danger. Basically, it's not uncommon for people who are psychic. They maybe have the genetic component, but it often becomes escalated when they have a very dangerous childhood where they have to kind of predict what's going to happen next to sort of be out of harm's way. So you've got trauma work to do if you're somebody like this. If you didn't do that trauma work, if you didn't go to therapy, if you didn't do your shadow work, then and you just only want to pretend like there's, light in the universe and there's no darkness, you're going to be led astray. You're going to end up delusional and you're going to end up like your friend who has fantasies of, who gets basically becomes delusional and in a fantasist sort of world because that's not the world we live in. Nobody's going to save you. There is no, you have protection maybe to some degree, but we're all vulnerable. And, Everybody gets sick, everybody dies, everybody has bad things happen to them. It does not matter if you're, the Karmapa or the the Pope, or, you're the Dalai Lama, or you're like the greatest psychic in the world, or you're the most spiritual person, or you're Gandhi. Um, you're going to have this world is harsh and dark, and there are dark people and dark things, and there's lessons to be learned. And, um, you know, uh, you have to face those things in yourself and in others in order to stay grounded. You can't just only want to see the good, which I think is sometimes a problem where people are so afraid, and their shadow stuff ends up eclipsing whatever gift and whatever intention they had. So I think that's probably what happened. There's a delusional belief that only God chooses and creates their life. Yes, Helen, you're totally right. Um, and I have to tell you, I don't see God that way. I don't see God as a being that interferes, or the creator. I think there are intercessor beings. There are, you know, people who have passed on, maybe angels and spirits who try to help us, but they don't help us by changing things. They help us by giving us information to help ourselves, right? I don't believe that God. I believe in more of this sort of a deist idea about the creator, which is that the creator made us. He's the programmer, or she, whatever, or it is the programmer. We're playing the game, and the programmer doesn't come in and save you, from yourself playing the game. This is all kind of just a learning experience, right? So if you're playing the game has been made for you. You set the course, you determine the outcome, and you might get help along the way, like you do in a game. You might get an extra weapon. You might get, some kind of a blanket of protection for a period, but uh, y- y- the programmer doesn't change the game for you. So that's what I think. I'm glad Newsom's getting heat. He could be a problem. I 100% agree, Diane. Okay, agreed. There could be a leader to come rescue. Yeah. Do you see Nuremberg trials after this is over? I'm going to hold that, because some of the stuff I've seen is more like what has happened in other countries, not what happened to the Nazis. That's all I'm going to say here. Um, yeah. Okay. Exactly. The former friend has also broke her hip, and she told me because she was going to use the law of attraction, but she can't afford to go to the hospital. Okay, again, this is what I'm talking about. And this is the thing I've been really upset about with the new age stuff. It's like there's a lot of delusion here that is been fed to people. And I think this is part of our problem. It's adding to our issue here, is the people that are spiritually inclined have been sort of led astray. And it goes back to that thing I was talking about. This friend of mine who is in my psychic group, who I've known now for about 6 years, she was Catholic, and she went with her church in the 90s, to meet with the kids, the children of Medjugorje, who were having visitations of the Virgin Mary. And the main message they kept repeating to the people in the church that came to visit and that wanted to know what the message was pray for the spiritual leaders, because they are leading people down the road to perdition. And I don't think they just meant in, in the Catholic Church, or the Christian, church, or the Jew, whatever faith. They also meant people who were in the New Age stuff, because this whole idea that, you know, you're gonna manifest everything. Um, sure, if you're on the astral plane and you wanna build a house with your imagination, now you can do that. But that's not how this reality works. We know the rules. There are rules here. It's a very dense, heavy place, and you can manifest things to some degree, but you also can only manifest what's in your karmic wheelhouse to manifest. You can't turn yourself. I'm not going to will myself into being a gorgeous 7 foot tall black woman. That's not going to happen. Maybe I wanna be a gorgeous 7-foot tall Black woman, but that's not gonna happen no matter how much I try to manifest that. And that sounds ridiculous because it is ridiculous. You're not gonna manifest an apple out of thin air, and this kind of mentality is delusional. Um, and so what I'm trying to say is, while there's intention and that has repercussions, there are limitations to that. And this is another thing that has driven me insane about the new age stuff. Also the health stuff, like it's your fault if you have a an illness, then, like diabetes, so you've given up on life and all this bullshit that Louise L. Hay said. People have health issues for a spiritual purpose. It's not a punishment and it's not a manifestation. There are spiritual reasons for problems in your life. They teach you things. They make you a better person if you allow them to. So that is uh, a real problem. And to me, the people who are the real far out there new agers, that's why you see them in the right wing shit, is because they have lost their way. They are basically so far to one side that they've kind of met the other side. And I'm not surprised. Uranus, Algol, thank you. Beheading, yes, incognito. That's right. Uranus is going to hit Algol. And then the weeping Pleiades after that, as it crosses over our fourth house cusp. ICE has been in my area for months. There's a large Hispanic and Somalian population. It's hard not to be concerned. My nephew is half Hispanic, and my sister and brother-in-laws are MAGA. Wow. I feel bad for you, Helen. Hmm. I mean, I don't think there's going to be anywhere that's really going to escape this at a certain point. I think when the spring comes is really when we're going to see, you know, like a flood of this happening in multiple cities at once. That's my feeling. Diane, French Revolution for sure. Yes. Deanna Olsen, but I am in Minneapolis with people being murdered and disappearing. We are way past it being bad. Yes. 100%. We are at the point, we're at the tipping point right now. Look, Denise, you have been right on the money all along. Thank you. I wish I wasn't. Kathy, the world will never trust us if we don't. Serena. So I don't know what that means. Maybe she must have meant something else. Maybe she'll clarify that. Do you see our borders being closed, not allowing us out? It's what makes me nervous and has been on my mind. I have a sense they won't let us out. Jennifer, I've already heard that there was talk about flights being they're stopping flights to Europe and to Canada. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I've already heard that, and I don't know where I heard that. Now, I think maybe I heard it from Helen, or maybe I dreamt it. I don't know, but sometimes I think I know things from somebody telling me something, but it's a psychic thing. I don't know, but I think you're right. At some point, they will probably close the borders, and it won't be you won't be able to get out. I mean, that's what fascist regimes often do. So, yes, and I think it's coming. Count my guillotine ready. I'm concerned about that too, Jennifer. Yep. Will there be guillotines in the Federal Revolution? I don't think there'll be guillotines, but we have a lot of weapons and a lot of people with weapons here. That's all I'm going to say. Jennifer, I felt that too. Do you see any of this getting any better in 2028, 2029? I think this is a start. So if this was an iceberg, we're at the tip of it. By 2028, we're in the throes of it, right? This is when I think it really ramps up to levels that you can't imagine. And I don't really want to lay out because I don't want to freak anybody out. But and I think that is the period, like I said, and I try to give hints about what I'm seeing without freaking people out. But back when Trump took office in 2025, 2024, 2025, yeah, so about a year ago, I was saying that I saw a lot of things in 2028 where it looked like the administration was really in chaos and there was a lot of bad stuff happening. So you can imagine what I mean by that. I will get into detail as we get closer to it, but what I think is this is going to really crescendo in 2028, and uh, eh, this will be a period where so this depending on what happens there. Uh, I mean, realistically, looking ahead at the aspects going into 2029, 20, and like I talked about in the chart of the New York Stock Exchange, really, there's this horrifying transit happening in the 30s that Neptune is going to hit that axis point where I think um, slowly, as we are like the economic situation is going to get a lot worse, and probably there's something coming pretty soon that's bad. Uh, but the level of collapse that is potential in the 2030s indicates that it's not going to get all better by 2029. However, the good news is, depending on how we deal with this, that Neptune transit could be the end of the economic system of capitalism, which could be the replacement of some kind of more socialized system where there's a redistribution of wealth, and the way we deal with trading in companies and corporations changes, and that could be why the stock market shift is. So what I'm saying is, it's just going to depend on 2028 to see how that next section goes. I'm hopeful that it'll be a reorganization of the monetary system and how we deal with our financial structures. And that if that's the case, that could be great, right? And that would mean that in 2029, 2030, we're reorganizing in a more social, democratic way. And we have uh, totally new leadership, and we're rebuilding our country in a new sort of paradigm. And that aspect might be when we figure out that things are going to be completely different. How we have to live. Maybe we have a socialized system because AI comes along and is doing most of our work for us, and people can't really make a living. So we have all these different things collapsing into a different way of being, and that's sort of the acme of it, like in the 2030s. So it could be slowly changing by then, and that's sort of the end of it and sort of a new beginning. So that's there are two possibilities there, and if it's not that one, it could be like hyperinflation, a collapse of our financial system, in a depression that's makes like what happened in Germany look not so bad. So I'm hoping that we get to a place where we replace this government and we actually replace a lot of the leadership. And I mean probably with people that are not Democrats or Republicans, um, before that happens, and people who actually want to transform the system and really remake it to a real democracy with socialist democracy, kind of like what we see in Europe. So it just depends, Jeff, on us and what we do from now until after that. I could see it going either way. Um, it could be either one of those things right now, and time will show us which of those two options is more likely. I'm hoping it's not the worst one. I'm hoping it's the better one. There was a U.S. senator who drafted a bill to force U.S. citizens to renounce their foreign citizenship. I heard about that. I heard about that. Trying no more dual citizenship. Yes, I told him before he got back in we needed to leave, but she won't. I trust me. I know that happened to me with my family. So that's what it is. I mean, a lot of us are stuck here because our family won't doesn't want to leave. His name is Bernie Marino. Okay. I was attracted to learning about Nazi Germany from a young age. Didn't understand why back then. Guess I know one reason now. Yep. Trauma breaks the ego down, which is ultimately a good thing for spiritual growth. That is true. Thank you for saying that, Denise. It's why I cut off the friendship as an intuitive. I strive to be grounded and do the shadow work on myself. I'd rather be faced with the things that are not so pleasant. That's good. And keep on that path because that's the true path. Deanna, the chart for the state of Minnesota. Yeah, particularly revealing. Yes. The current transit of Uranus is opposing Mars. And yes, dicey and potentially dangerous period. That's right. And actually, I wrote a Substack piece about that. Probably around the time that Renee Good I think it was the day after she was murdered. And I've looked at it in my class a bunch, but yes, and it is a very inflammatory and intense bunch of transits and progressions actually happening there. Sandra, I don't know what that means. Okay, Minnesota chart. Yep. Also squaring the American moon, suggesting a national impact and widespread concern. The president might use the chaos in Minnesota as a pretext. Yes, that he's talked about doing that. Deanna, do you think there is an association between childhood illness and becoming highly intuitive? My grandma, who was very ill as a child, was very psychic. That is a good question. Maybe. I mean, I think illness, if it's depending on how extreme it is, kind of puts you in the in between, kind of. And I think, childhood, you're already kind of really open because you're fresh here. Um, but I could see where an illness could make you like that. Um, Trauma and illness is a trauma. So, sure. A former Black Panther started a YouTube channel where he talks about how to resist and fight what's happening. We can learn a lot from that generation. Yes. Thank you for all that, Denise. The former friend was an energetic weight holder holding me down. So I'm 100% no contact. I don't mourn the friendship. That's good, Elena. Just move on because it's all you can do. Cindy's is spot on. I was recently in a Zoom meeting for a men's group, and when they were basically talking about the law of attraction or manifesting, I actually thought about how much that philosophy is related to being a part of an empire, like you've mentioned, Denise. That is right. I think that whole thing, in my opinion, is born out of America and this sort of manifest destiny stuff and the whole idea that the sort of Protestant view that God is on your side if you're doing the right stuff, then you get lots of money. I think that it's whether they consciously understand it or not, it really is rooted in a lot of very ignorant, spiritually ignorant things. I'm afraid to travel. You can leave with your passport and not be let in. Sorry, yes, I agree, Deanna. A lot of people are afraid to travel. So many people I've talked to are terrified to leave the country, and not be let back into the US. Yes. Um, yeah, I hear you, and not only that, but they are stopping people and looking at your phones and, harassing people and sometimes detaining them if they have any somebody had, a meme, like a weird meme that was sort of anti-Trumpish, but not real extreme, and they were, harassed and, it's just it's scary, coming in and out of the country. A lot of people feel you're the same way you do, Deanna. Hey, Rachel. Wanda, hi. What is the perfect analogy for what you see in the next 2 to 3 years? I guess the best one is the French Revolution. Yeah. I mean, I think also you could throw in, guerrilla warfare, like what happens in, countries like Vietnam, where you have people fighting forces, guerrilla style. And I see a lot of chaos and eventual collapse of this government, uh, and not in a political way. I think it's going to come in a much more harsh way. Let's just say that. Will this be going on until some of us die? And I mean that through attrition and natural causes or through the fighting. I hate to say that, but I think that is what's happening too. Yeah. I do think that this is a period, this period of time is like a reaping time. That's and even back in the 90s when I was hanging out around with my other psychic friends and we were all feeling into the future and talking about future things, people kept talking about how they felt like there were less people here. There's that this period of time was going to have less people, and that there was a period of time, like in the 2020s, 2030s, that there was less people on the planet. And I think that's, like I said, like even if Kamala Harris had won, there still would have been like the Civil War, there would have been World War. It would have just been different version of this. So I think this is a time of reaping and like a time where there's just so many things that are bringing about this. I mean, you everywhere you look, there are you've got depletion of water resources, contamination, climate change. I think there's coming other plague, and we won't know about it because of this administration. You've got this brewing civil war, world war. You know, a lot of people aren't going to make it through all that stuff, and um, that's going to be really hard on everybody. So this is another reason it's really important to stay grounded in your spirituality and also to be right with your spirituality because ultimately we all have to go. We're all here to transition. We don't stay here forever. And also for other people, if they're going through mourning or trauma, to be able to be there for them and their angst and their anger and their pain, to be able to be soothing and help heal them emotionally. Those all of you guys, that's I believe that everyone who's kind of one of my people are people here to help spiritually with other people and through compassion and love and support. So we may not be the ones who are boots on the ground or fight or whatever, but we're the ones who are the medics, right? The spiritual medics for the situation. And that's our role. And so that's a role you should think of playing is how do I help people through this trauma? How can I listen to them and support them? How do I use my good energy to heal, to do healing and make them feel better? That's because this is a very traumatic period of time that we're going into and that we're already in, but it's going to get worse. And to me, the thing that's always been the most frightening about this period of time isn't so much the transition, it's the trauma. The trauma stays with people, it can burn into your soul. And I think if we want to help, we have to help people with the trauma because the spiritual burden of that, we don't want people to carry that with them into the next iteration of their growth, their spiritual growth. And so I believe that's really um, what a lot of the light worker people came here to do is to really be a balm, a salve for this, for the rest, for people who are in the throes of this, to help them and to support them and to give them love and compassion. So that's what I think. I always want my children to build their energy to the collapse. I'm so glad my lunch breaks are you. Thanks, Jeff. I would much rather be freaked out by you so I can be prepared than to find out too late when the shit hits the fan. Freak us out, Denise. Okay. Well, Neptune going to Aries wake everyone up. Yes, I think that's part of what Neptune and Aries is going to do. I think it's going to move us from being confused into action, into anger, into rage, right? So I think just like when we saw the very little taste of it we got last year, it people just started organizing and going out and protesting. Well, we have this massive stellium in Aries happening in the spring. So this is like a very inciting kind of active we need to do something kind of energy, right? So, and I think the confusion and the delusion energy of the Neptune and Pisces thing and the dissolution of our institutions, the Neptune Saturn conjunction is resolving in this, we see clearly now what's happened. We need to do something. And I think people are waking up. And I think by at that point, they're going to feel like ready to go, is what I think. Okay. I had a weird dream when I saw ICE agents hunted down and dealt with, like the Nazis were hunted down. Well, I think you're not wrong about that, Serena. With you, Ingrid. Agree. Okay, Ingrid, absolutely. Do any signs you see that give credence to the rapture occurring within 25 years? Um, Well, the rapture is actually, a construct that was sort of came about in the 1800s, I think, by a minister. It's not something that's actually prophesied in the Bible or anything like that. Um, but I think the rapture is kind of, if you want to like give a big leeway, is I think it's a mass migration of souls who are going to ascend to the next level or iteration of spiritual growth. So I think, like the Tibetans, think that humanity, everyone has to become enlightened, or no one does, right? But I don't think that's true. I think what's happening here is there are people that are going to be enlightened, and then there are people that are not, and the people that are not are not going to go forward into the next level of incarnation of humanity. And so I guess you could call that the rapture, and that there will be people who move forward and continue on the path, and others who I think will be recycled, back to the cosmic soup and start over again. So I think that's as close to the rapture as I think. I think, a lot of times prophecy, and this is not even prophecy, but in the Bible, I think it says something about, so many people are going to be saved. And I think saved is this, like, are going to end up, transitioning. Now, it was also written 2,000 years ago or more, some of that stuff. And it's like, or less, I think some of that is, again, it's like when you get psychic or prophetic information, it's often metaphorical. So I don't think any of it is literal, like how people are taking it. And that's been a big problem, I think, for the evangelicals, is they're so literal and black and white that they don't really understand what's going on. 2 years is just not enough time to organize unless people are focused. True. I think they're going to get pretty hyper focused, though, Jeff. Will the technique of the Americas become a reality? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. No. I plan to join the monks during the peace walk when they come to my area. This is the energy we should manifest and encourage. I agree, Gigi. That is exactly right. Fire. Okay. Will we be able to hold dual citizens? I don't think so. I think, Elena, they're talking about getting rid of that. Denise, when you said you saw something regarding Nuremberg trials, someone asked you about that. You said you saw something more similar to other Yoders. I then thought of the Roman dictator, the Romanian dictator, and what happened to him and his wife. Yeah, it's more along the lines of what has happened to modern dictators, is what I see happening. And the thing about the technocracy, the techno state or whatever, technocrat state, um, I mean, I could imagine there being some version of that, but not like what they think. I could see small sort of, I think whatever is left over, our technology won't be completely annihilated. So I do think people will have technology, but I don't see it being an authoritarian situation. I see it being more like community, more in people in I think the environment is gonna be so hostile that people are gonna have to work together, and that's all I can say about that, really. And that, um, the idea of one sort of, some of the fantasies that these people have, they're fantasies. They're just total fantasies. They're not it's not gonna be how it goes. My character there showed dumpster fire in the neck of characters. That is pretty accurate. Good for you, Gigi. They don't come anywhere close to me, but the timing of the walk is so appropriate. Yeah, it really is. I keep thinking of the images of Mussolini hanging in the streets. That's all I can say about that. Elena, as long as that bill isn't passed, you should be able to keep your dual citizenship. That's true. Hopefully, it won't pass. I agree with you. I see into a collapse of the country. Yeah, I do too. Yeah. Okay, I should probably call it because I think I've been doing this for a long. How long have I been on? Oh, an hour and a half. That's a long time. Movie on Amazon called Delicious. So it's a French. Oh, I want. Yeah, that's a good idea to watch that. Jeff, glad to see. One last note from Minneapolis: ice will ram cars into traffic. It is fearful to drive around. I bet it is. I'm so sorry that I feel so bad for Minneapolis. I love Minneapolis. It's such a great city. It's so awful. Uh, I grew up in Chicago, and I had a friend who lived in Minneapolis, and I visited her there, and it's a great city. It's such a great city. 95 children trauma, so I guess better stay grounded. Yep. Spiritual medic. I like that. I'm an animal medic. That tracks. Is this the year of the horse on fire? Yeah, the fire horse. Yep. It says frozen on my iPad as I want to see here. Okay. Is the Piscean era more general, peaceful generally? I'm an Aries with the Sag moon. Well, it's the Aquarius age, right? So it should be the age of humanity where people work together with technology. So it should not be more violent. It shouldn't, and it should not, it should be more egalitarian. It should be more technological. So I think after this period, that's what's coming. Yeah. Okay. I'm starting to think now. I'm sorry. Oh, having a cold time. Okay, I should go, you guys. I'm Iranian American. Okay, I can't read. Okay, all right, you guys. Lots of love to all of you. I know it's very traumatic times, but we'll keep doing this. And blessings to all. Pray for Minneapolis. Try to put golden light, white light protection around all the protesters, um, and if you know anyone there, call them and listen to them and let them vent and try to give them some support. Um, this is a really tough time for everyone, but it's especially tough for people in Minneapolis. And I think Maine is now getting hit too. So, like I said, I think this is going to come to multiple cities at once by the spring. All right, you guys, blessings to all of you. God bless you. Lots of love. You're always in my prayers. And I thank you for being part of my community. I will see you guys soon. All right. Take care.